All right, guys, welcome to podcast. Well, it's the CrossFit Grandview podcast, number 25. Today, I am here with a guest, 8-year member, former national champion on the Buckeyes, a guy who I've really come to respect over the course of just spending a lot of time with him over the last 8 years, John Hollins. Just a little context into how we set this up. We're due for a podcast, so I was planning on shooting one this week.
Sure.
And I believe it was Sunday, John reached out, and he's just, basically just said, hey, I'm a friend. If you need someone to talk to during this really challenging time, I'm here. And so we chatted yesterday.
Yeah.
On the phone, and it was really helpful for me just to have that conversation with someone I could feel vulnerable with and open with, and not terrified that I was going to say the wrong thing or anything like that. And he had a lot of really good insight on what's going on, and just has a great perspective on things, and I just wanted to bring him on here to kind of have a conversation and chat. So,
well, B, I appreciate it. I thank you for allowing me to come in. This is in some way therapeutic. I've been a member, like you said, for 8 years. So I'm an OG back when we were in that little closet of a gym in Gahanna, and to see the growth from that, and just the maturation of the gym, has been amazing to see. And then also, you just the climate that we're in right now, with social media, we're in such a microwave society where everything is instant, and we've had a hell of a 6 months this year. 2020 has been challenging, to say the least. We have COVID going on, and it pushed pause, and it forced everybody to slow down and to self-quarantine, and it forced the economy to do that as well. And then right when we're all excited and ramped up to get back into life, we have civil and social unrest is a nice way of putting it. We were all forced to take a look in a mirror as a society, as not just Americans, but as society, and it brought a lot of stuff to the surface. And so, with social media, it's a gift and a curse. You're able to be in touch with all the people that you want to be in touch with whenever you want to be in touch with them. And the curse side of it is everyone has a voice, and there's no pause button. And I kind of want to backtrack and say that I want to start with through all of this, I think that no matter your views on life, and I'll get into mine in a second, whether you're spiritual, religious, mindful, agnostic, atheist, science, or a combination of it all, I think that you have to agree that where there's good, there's evil. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So no matter your perspective or your views on life, whether it's God or if it's just strictly science-based, that there is evil in the world, and not necessarily that it is people that are evil. There are people that are much, I say it's above my pay grade that could talk on this topic more, but I think that we can see that there is an evil aspect to certain things in life. So for me, I think it's important to lay out my background and my point of view and my belief system, because it is, it's one opinion, right? We're all humans, but, we're all unique as our fingerprints, our thumbprints. So for me, like, I am a man of faith. I believe in God. I try the best I can to, emulate and take the model of what Jesus was trying to do. And I'm not trying to cram religion down anyone's throat, but I'm just giving you a perspective of, like, me and my thought process as we start this conversation. So, the two greatest commandments are love your Lord thy God with all your mind and heart. And then the second is love your neighbor as yourself. And period, like that in itself. So for me, I come from a place of empathy and love and understanding, and I mentioned it a little bit ago, being able to push the pause button. And whether it's with my daughter and, she's not listening to me and, like, I'm telling her the directions for the 15th time, push the pause button so that I can have a reaction and I can be thoughtful and strategic in the way that I'm approaching things and people. And so even as we'll talk today, I pause a lot. You'll see me pause and I kind of get up in my head a little bit because words are important. Words are powerful. And once they're out, you can't pull it back in. Even in the corporate or workplace, it's, we have the trainings where it's like, hey, before you send that email out, like, take a second, pause, take a walk, do something. Like, is that email the best email that you should be sending? Are you emotional? Is it highly charged? So, that's a little bit of, like, layout and background of where I come from in my thought process. So, I'm kind of, people, they may say that, well, John, Brandon, you guys have known each other for 8 years and, you're comfortable with each other,
sure.
which we are, We've had beers together at your house. And, we've been at the gym 8 years, just, kind of the blood, sweat, and tears thing. And like I said earlier, seeing the gym grow from, literally a garage to the juggernaut that CrossFit Grandview has become. And it's always felt like family to me. One of my best friends and one of your coaches, Dan, it's such a weird dynamic and friendship. I really don't know why I like him.
It's like a Robin Big type situation.
Because he's an awful human being. I'm joking. There's a lot of great people. The camaraderie that I miss from being an athlete and playing sports my whole life, like, that filled that void.
Yep.
So it's it's been a great place to. So for me, one with COVID happening and, like most small businesses, it was like, crap, like what's going to happen? So like, I'm really excited and happy that the gym is thriving and still on its feet.
I had a couple people, good friends, like, that was it for them, like close buddies who they had to shut it down. That was tough. That was challenging, and I see how it did that to them too. It wasn't an easy thing to get through, especially if slow weekends stress you out, let alone, quarters that you're not in work. So
right.
Yeah.
So then to have that happen, and then you layer that with, just the atrocities that, were on camera. I think it hit everyone in a certain way. But then as a business owner, you're in a way you're forced to come up with almost a business vision plan for, like, your social piece of it, and it's like a pop quiz that for, I would say, 99% of businesses, they didn't think that they would have to come out and like, okay, wow, let me address this right now as it's happening, because social media and the media, it's this big juggernaut, and you better say something fast or else you get gobbled up, good, bad, or indifferent. So kind of with that being said, and people say he's the safe black guy. Like, listen to how he talks, and I'm bringing that up from my past, right? If it's on the white side, we're like, okay, well, you don't sound like what I would expect. And on the flip side of that, even family members that don't live here, they say, man, you talk white. And we'll get into that a little more, but from that aspect of anyone who thinks that I'm safe, like, you can look at me like I'm a black man in America going through this. I've had trials and tribulations. Like I said before, everyone's experience is different and unique. I grew up in Huber Heights, Ohio, which is working class, blue collar, middle class town, super diverse, a lot of majority white people. But kind of my history. So my parents are, older for my age. My dad was born in 1942 in Yazoo, Mississippi. My mom was born in 1946 in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, right on the Tennessee border. So they grew up in segregated Jim Crow South. If you want to Google it, Google Mississippi burnings. And so the things that my parents saw and went through growing up, my dad tells me, and my Uncle Jim before he passed away, the reason that the family moved from Mississippi to St. Louis was my dad's uncle, so they were sharecroppers. So like my grandmother and her brothers were still like working the land in Mississippi, picking cotton. The landowner, who's white, and my dad's uncle had an altercation. And through that altercation, like, if the family did not leave town, they were going to die. So my dad remembers being a little kid, 6, 7 years old, laying on the back, on the back floor of the car, literally as his uncle's like shooting his way out of town.
Oh man.
So, I asked my dad recently, why did you make the decisions you made? And, from being born in Mississippi, growing up in inner city St. Louis, and then my dad went into the military. So my dad's a Vietnam veteran, was in Idrain Valley 1965 and 1966, where he saw some stuff, as you can imagine, being in war. And I asked him recently, why did you make the decisions that you made? Like, why was it the military? And he told me, well, your grandfather, so John Sr., I'm the third, John the third. So John Sr. was a World War II veteran. And 2 of my dad's uncles were also World War II veterans. So from a military standpoint and aspect, and I'll just throw this in here a little bit, I respect the flag, I respect the military, but there are stories of my dad coming back from Vietnam, and that was a tumultuous time where, 1, America didn't want to be in that war, and 2, being a black man coming back, being in the uniform, may not have received the respect that we would give now.
Yep.
And that's for damn sure. You go back to World War II, and my grandfather wasn't exactly received with warmth when they came back from the war. So fast forward that to asking my dad why he made the decisions he wanted to make, and he told me about about my grandpa being stopped by the police, being slapped around, and my dad seeing that. He always knew he wanted to get his family away from that and to be away from that. And so the military was an avenue for him to do that. The military was a way for him to not only get his bachelor's degree, but to get a master's degree in psychology and then get another master's degree in business administration. It was also an avenue for my mother, who was Hopkinsville, Kentucky. When she was a little girl, around 8 or 9 years old, their house was burned down. And her and some of her siblings had to go live with another sibling, like their older sibling. So my mom's the youngest, so like her older sister was quite a bit older. Mm-hmm. So the things they saw growing up and, fast forward into their kids. And so, like I said, growing up in Huber Heights, where the majority of the people I went to school with look like you.
Yep.
It was diverse. There was black, white, brown, different ethnicities, race, religion. So for me, it was kind of this awesome bubble to grow up in. I'll get back to a neighbor who used to fly a Confederate flag. And this is just how awesome our community was. He flew a Confederate flag because that's what he grew up with. And he's older, he's like my parents' age and has since deceased. But through a simple conversation, my dad, and his name is Mr. Conley, he took the flag down. And he was like, that's not what I meant it for. Yep. And through that conversation, kind of like we're having now, they were able to resolve an issue where, if there was still silence, there may have been tension on either
Sure.
side. So I think it's good to open things up and to have the conversation, to push pause. But circling back around to my experience, why I'm here, I grew up in a suburb of Dayton, but through what my parents went through and what they saw and what they instilled in us, even seeing some of the most disgusting behaviors of human beings, my parents instilled in us that you treat people how they desire and deserve to be treated, and that you handle your business, you take responsibility for your actions. You love yourself enough to generate enough energy to do what's expected of you without trying to deceive others for personal gain. These are things that my parents instilled in their kids. And so my dad was being military. My dad was a badass, okay? I'm just going to say it. He boxed in high school. He boxed in the military. He taught hand-to-hand combat while in the military, was a drill sergeant, and was led his battalion when they were in Vietnam. So my dad and his pictures of him in his younger years, and I'm not just blowing smoke. To put into perspective, I'm 6'2", 215 pounds. I'm not a small dude. So clearly my dad had a little bit of size.
Sure.
So think of, my dad was 5'10", 5'11", 220. So think Mike Tyson in his prime. I've got pictures and I won't pull them up right now.
Yeah.
But I got a picture of my dad in Vietnam holding a grenade, and I've never been in the shape that he's in.
Sure.
Playing college football, I've never been in that type of shape. So, with that military background, it was, look, you will talk a certain way, you will walk a certain way. There's going to be structure to your life, and I hated it as a kid growing up, but it laid a foundation not only for who I am and knowing who I am, but also it instilled the discipline and the camaraderie and the teamwork and the empathy and the love of other people. So if my parents can go through that, my grandparents can go through that, and still be able to instill love, peace, empathy to their kids, then I think as humans that that's something that we can strive for. So, I'll just take I've rambled quite a bit.
No. I mean, like what we were kind of discussing on the phone, you were telling me, this incident is just brought hundreds of years of layers to the surface all at one time, really fast.
Yeah.
And like you explaining that story in the background of just your family kind of coming up is like a perfect example of that. Like that's, 100 years, like boom, of and that's what's piling on people's backs, and where people are like really upset, and what I think sometimes maybe people even in my position aren't understanding is like, what's going on, why are people so upset, and conversations like this help people, I think, understand what's going on to some degree, where like from my perspective it's like I hadn't experienced something like that, so it's like or even had that background in my family where you're just seeing the surface, or like people are just seeing things getting torn up, and they're like, what's going on, or even like maybe getting attacked online or something, like, hey, I don't know why this is happening. Conversations like this create understanding, I think.
So that's a great segue. There are so many layers to all of this, and I will keep saying it, and you will keep hearing me repeat this, is I think as a whole we need to master the pause button. And what's going on right now, there's hundreds of years of just layers of you hear the words systemic racism, oppression, but I think a good question for everyone to ask is why to anything. Find out the why. And right now, I think that, not just right now, but what people need to take a step back is everyone is conditioned, right? And so even in the world of, are we allowed to say CrossFit? No. Even in the world of functional fitness, constantly varied, done at a high intensity world, that you're conditioned, right? And so when I say condition, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Everyone's household is different. Your household was different than, say, Michael Murphy's household, right? But you're both white. What does that mean? Like, you came from different parents, different lineage. Who's different from John Hollins? Who's different from my good friend who's also a black man, Mike Hill? Like, we came, like, everything is different. And so going back generations in how things are taught to us, what we see, what we talk about, what we don't talk about. Hey, if you ask me something about the Jewish culture, sorry, there's a lot of things that I'm going to be ignorant on, right? So to expect people that don't live it day to day to understand every aspect of it, I think is unfair. And that's one of the reasons that I reached out to you. There's a story I've heard, and people have probably heard or read it, where there's a, and this is such a great example. There's a woman who's, she was cooking a ham for the holidays, and she cut the end off the ham. And they asked her, like, why did you cut the end off the ham? Well, that's how my mom taught me. That's how I saw her do it, so that's why I do it. She reaches out to her mom, why did you cut the end off of the ham? Oh, well, that's how I saw Grandma do it. That's, so that's how we learned to do it. So then they asked the grandma, well, Grandma, why why did we cut the ham, like the end off of the ham? She said, well, when me and your grandfather were first married, we were in this small efficiency, and we had a small stove and oven, so the only way for the ham to fit in there was for us to cut the end off. But here you are 2 generations later, and they're still cutting the end off of the ham. So, from that perspective of understanding and what we're conditioned, good, bad, or indifferent, what we're conditioned to think like, speak like, just like the world of fitness, you can't walk into we'll use CrossFit, which I know is a bad word right now, but you can't walk into the gym and expect to be in the CrossFit Games next week. It's just not going to happen. You can have a professional athlete, you can have a pro football player, pro baseball player, walk into a CrossFit gym. They're not going to make the CrossFit Games in a week, in a month, probably not a year. Just not going to happen. There is so much that goes into it, and it's such a long process. So this is a 1,000-mile journey. Like I said, this is hundreds of years of layers to this. To think that we are going to go from A to Z in 14 days, not going to happen. Let's have proper perspective. I do think that society is fed up, and we're seeing a lot of awesome actions and movements towards the goal. But for me to expect you to know what to do, what to say, it's unfair. Like, it's one step at a time. And I think having a conversation like this to get these tough topics on the table is something that's important, and I think we can all learn and grow from it.
Yeah, it's a challenging time. The one thing I've tried to put out there is show that, I'm trying to do right by everybody and do the right thing.
I'll jump in here. Yeah. Look, I've known you. I think people are angry, there are a couple sides to it. I think people are angry and confused, or both, and they don't know what to do. So people lash out and they explode, they pop. When there's anger, anger is like a secondary emotion where there's something on the layer, on the surface that's causing that.
Sure.
It's probably sadness, hurt, wanting to be valued, wanting to be seen as a human, as one black man speaking, not speaking on behalf of everyone. But there's this hurt, this confusion, this sadness of being able to look on the TV screen and see this man die in front of us under the knee of someone who is white. So what I think is happening, it's a double-edged sword, and this is my opinion, this is my belief. I am not speaking for everyone, I can't. I think that one, we need to be careful of our microwave society and forcing everyone to make a statement and forcing everyone to think like we think. I think that's ridiculous for me to expect you to think the way that I think. Or for anyone, it just doesn't work that way. Our experiences and our lenses are different. There's an old sales saying that a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So from my perspective, I'm pretty laid back, dude. I'm not easily offended because I know who I am and I know who I'm not. When somebody says something, tweets something racist, and yeah, it's frustrating, but it's just in my face saying, I don't like you, I don't want to associate with you. I would much rather have that than somebody, hey, let me put my arm around you.
Sure.
But behind closed doors, they're plotting, whatever, bad, evil things behind me, So I think we need to be careful in forcing everyone, think like this, talk like this, say this.
Yeah.
Like it's 14 days. It's a really fast and short amount of time to think that we're just going to shift the paradigm versus hundreds of years. So I think we need to be careful about that. But I do think that it's good is that it's pushing the agenda.
Yep.
So if we can master the pause, what's our plan of action? What are the steps that we're going to take? Anything in life, if it's fitness, what are your goals? Do you want to squat 400 pounds? Do you want to clean, 200 pounds? What's your goal? Because that's what you're going to work towards. You're going to put a squat program together so that you can get stronger. You're going to mark down your progress. But for me to jump into, I'm going to squat 700 pounds. And for me to get underneath 700 pounds and try to squat it, probably going to, my knees are going to fly out from under me, and my back's going to be wrecked. And I'm going to do more damage than good trying to just automatically get.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. That's why I brought you on here. I couldn't.
Every now and then.
I couldn't have put it that way. That's great.
Might have a good idea or something, but no. So that's there's a lot. I think we need to be careful of trying to get things from A to Z super fast.
Yep.
Just like anything else, there needs to be a plan of action. And I don't think that it's a bad thing for someone to take time, gather their thoughts,
yep,
get insight, get wisdom from different areas before coming up with this plan of action moving forward.
And that's where I'm at with the business as well, with the whole de-affiliation movement. I've got 20 employees, and I put my whole life into what we're doing, and on a day to just throw it on its head without taking time to actually think about what's going on. And Andy just got a level 3. Okay, hey Andy, you got a level 3 CrossFit certification. That doesn't mean anything now. That's over. This dude's put 12, he's as well as me, he's been in this as long as I have, he's put 12 years of his life into it, and it's, to just throw that on its head without giving it proper thought and and seeing how it plays out for a minute, and to actually just make a really informed decision, I think is unfair to not only the staff but the members and everyone who has been a part of this whole fitness and CrossFit movement. It's a challenging time where I think I have to be mindful and really, with my whole staff and everyone, have these kind of conversations before I'm okay, guys, this is the direction we're going to steer this boat.
That's great that you bring that up. Greg Glassman, I think it's safe to say extremely selfish, because not only did he jeopardize his baby, as he would call it, but he jeopardized the livelihood of thousands of people. And I think this goes back to empathy and putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. Would you want just think about, would you want that done? Would I want that done to me in anything, right? If I call you a name, if I call you out of your name, would I want that done to me? No. Would I want you to ignore, if I'm on the ground bleeding, would I want you to walk by and ignore it? No. And, I'm using that to kind of as a metaphor of some things that have gone on. But you're also, so now the decisions of one man, I don't care what organization it is, I don't think the whole organization will have the exact same thoughts. I don't care what organization it is. From Amazon to Crimson Cup over here. Because everyone's experience and everyone's view is different. However, it puts people affiliated with that in a predicament where, okay, now we've been tied to this for so long. This is our part of our brand. This is what we do. And not only is it just Brandon, but it's your family, one, and then that goes down into 20 employees? Mm-hmm. Okay, not just those 20 employees, their families, and not just your employees. Now you have 600-700 people who are members of your gym. And so if you look at it that way, to make a decision like that, it goes back to the pause button. I think you and I both agree, Greg Glassman, wrong.
Absolutely.
His statements were atrocious. And if you've made the decision, which I've seen a lot of popular CrossFit names make that decision, right away. I think it forces the issue of CrossFit HQ and CrossFit Games to, okay, what's your move now? Mm-hmm. I think if you remove the cancer from that organization, it becomes a new organization. I think if Greg Glassman remains there, I think that's troublesome for thousands of people.
I agree. Yep.
But in my opinion, and again, it's all I can give you. I think it's important to weigh out the options and have a plan before. And this isn't me being a Brandon and CrossFit Grandview cheerleader. This is just how I try to live my life. Like, okay, let's not make a knee-jerk reaction, because I've done it, and it's most of the time it doesn't end well when I make a decision like that. But it's just tough, man. And so I feel for you. Like we talked briefly, but if you could go through some of what have you been feeling the past, not just past couple weeks, but few months, how have you been feeling?
It's just a rolling anxiety, and my brain is just, okay, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? How do we fix this? How do we fix this? How do we fix this? And it's been this in straight fight or flight. Mike, who's filming this, has experienced 100% of it too with me. For, I don't know, about 3 months. And I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me or think my position is hey, I really feel bad for this person. I mean, this business has done some really cool things for me and put me in a position where, maybe some people envied me at certain points in time. And then, there's the good and the bad with it. So it's I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me or what I'm going through, because that's the job I signed up for. I didn't anticipate this. I don't think anyone could have. Going from, the frying pan right into the fire here with COVID, and then, the founder, completely just throwing us under the bus. And, with both things, I feel like, they didn't take any action, they just kind of left us out here kind of hanging in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really unfortunate, and it's there's a lot more that goes behind like just switching our name, because in the short term, I've talked to people, and I'm not worried about like this month like members quitting if I changed our entire name and website and all of that, but there's a lot to consider, and there's like 11 years of things build up, and where you get new clients. There's a lot of things that go into it. Like I was saying, what happens to our certifications? Do we all have to go get exercise physiology degrees? Like, that's a challenging thing to do at 38 years old, Like, that wasn't what I had a degree in. So is that just all dumped on its head in a day because of a guy making a really ignorant statement, and now like all our hard work is ruined, which is a really challenging thing to navigate. And that's why I just want to like let things settle and process it, to be like, okay, what can we do? What's our next move? I'm listening to our members. I'm getting emails and Facebook messages, every 20 minutes with, suggestions and recommendations, and Brandon, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And I'm listening to everybody, but it's tough. You're getting information from all over the place, and it's hard to like sift through all of it and be like, okay, like some of it is, actionable. Some of it is like, that would be impossible to do, and so I'm trying to listen to everyone. I'm trying to do right by everyone. I want everyone to know they're being heard. Like, I'm hearing everybody, from my coaches right down to every member who's been, 8-10-year members, to people who've been with us for 2 or 3 months. Like, I hear you, I'm listening to you. I want to do right by all of you guys. But every decision needs to be taken seriously and not lightly. Our organization is different in a lot of ways, where I think it's easier to make a decision if you're like CrossFit Grandview isn't Brandon. So I think in a lot of ways, a lot of gyms are their owner. Like, oh, that's so-and-so's gym. A lot of people don't even know that I own the gym. Like, they walk in, they have no idea. I've had members like that I've worked out in class with for 6 months every day be like, oh, I just thought you were a member, because I was just working out with them and hanging out with them every day in the noon class. They're like, I didn't know you owned the place. Whereas if like your name or your celebrity as a person, you're like, oh yeah, I'll de-affiliate, like blah, easy. It's like, well, yeah, it's about you, nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to shit on those guys or anything. It's just I feel like it's an easier decision to make if you are a brand in yourself. And I've always made this about our whole gym as a community and our coaches and everything. And I've tried to kind of almost stay back out of like that and not make it about me. So that's where it's harder, because we just had a meeting yesterday. I'm like, guys, what do you think? I'm like, I'm opening this up to all you guys. Tell me what you think. I don't want to make decisions. The statement we made after Glassman put that out, I wrote it up and I sent it to all the coaches. I'm like, are you guys on board with this? I'm like, I don't want to make a statement without you guys being behind it. I'm like, I know I'm the leader, but I don't want to represent you without you guys like being like, yeah. So that's the position I'm in, and I'm just trying to make decisions that aren't rash or don't represent at least the most of us collectively. And it's a really challenging spot to be in, because people are looking to poke holes in what you say.
So let me let me do this.
Yep.
And this is an uncomfortable question.
Sure.
So now it's poor Brandon, poor white business owner.
Sure.
Like things aren't going well for you. Like why should we feel sorry for you? And this isn't, I already told you like how I operate, but there are people out there that will say, black, white, it doesn't matter. Like, why should we have empathy towards you, or like we don't feel sorry for you? And,
Sure.
You said it. We don't want anybody, like, you don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. So before I like let you answer, I'll kind of insert that with everything going on, and George Floyd was just, it's the tip of the iceberg. There's so much beneath the surface. And with that being said, like, what I can only speak for myself, but I think that from a good chunk of the black community, and I'll even say this, look, I don't like all of anything. Like, so I can love you from afar and not like you.
Yep.
Like, we just don't have to affiliate. We don't have to deal with each other. So to say that, like, I love all white people, nah. I don't like everything that everyone does. I don't like everything that every black person does. We could talk like another 2 days on that stuff.
Sure.
But I think for a good chunk of people, that it's like, look, I don't want you to feel sorry for me as a black man, but just like, how would you feel if the roles were reversed, if you were in my shoes? So if you were watching the news and you saw somebody that looked like yourself, or that looked like your uncle or your brother or your cousin or your friend going through this over and over again, and you're seeing it, how would you feel? And so I think it's from a color perspective, race perspective, however you want to look at it. Like, people throw the words like reparations out there. For me, like, would that be nice? Is that fair? Life isn't fair. But just like, I think in equality, it's like, just if there are two of us, and I'm using another metaphor, analogy, whatever, two of us going for the job, if I'm qualified for it, and my name is, Deontay, Washington, and then Paul Smith is over here, like, whoever's more qualified. And that's just a like simple way of putting it, but like, just like being able to have the same opportunities. I think Chris Rock said this. He said, we want the same opportunity to screw up like white people. Like, I don't want to have to be like, I don't want to have to like make sure that my game is like super duper elevated just to be on the level with white people that are here, where I've got to go so far and above to be level. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's the opportunity to screw up. So to rewind and toss this hot nugget in your lap, back to the comment, like, poor white business owner, like, you're feeling a little bit of what black people
Sure.
have felt for 400, for years. What's your response to that?
I think I think in my position, or all business owners are going through this to some varying degree, is even when approaching them, and just whether it's a criticism, a critique, or advice, just like you were saying, flip the script around and put yourself in that position, and trying to understand what they're dealing with, and just what they actually have to navigate, and more on a macro scale too than just a micro scale. It's easy to make like a flash decision, but we don't understand what like how that could cascade into where it's like, oh, okay, well that decision could mean, okay, so we don't have the CrossFit name. Ah, man, we're not bringing in enough revenue, you know.
Speaking of revenue, well, you know, since you're white, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, this is a joke for people watching it. But why are you joking? It's such a sensitive topic. I get it. But Brandon, aren't you, because you're white, didn't you inherit like millions of dollars, and like isn't money like not an issue where you don't have to worry about it? And like, don't you just have like a few million that you can just like float whenever things go bad?
No, and without diving into how I started this business, which was with like a tiny loan on top of another little bit bigger loan on top of another bigger loan, and when it's all said and done, you know, and then I on my student loans, and you know, I've paid off $500,000 in loans through this whole process, and it's all gone now. I mean, like I've paid that off. But you know, when I started this, I had myself and my business partner. It's a funny, quick story, but we were trying to get an SBA loan to buy the equipment in the gym, and we both had identical like financial records. It was hilarious. We each had about $1,500 in a checking account, $5,000 on a credit card, $30,000 in student loans, and cars both worth under $2,000. So we had like about like $2,000 or we had about $3,000 worth of assets total, and you know, a bunch of debt. So we had nothing. You know, they're like looking at it like laughing, like at our like things. But that's just where I started. I certainly, you know, I had to kind of like claw my way up, and it eventually got some legs, and you know, I just kept taking risks and risks and risks, and it's you know, the game's not over, but it's
I'll bring that up because I think it's easy to sit back and like look at the success of the gym now and be like he's good, like, you know, financially, like he doesn't have to worry about anything. So again, like I ask questions so that I think there's the vulnerability and opening up, like, hey, like just because you're a certain way and you look a certain way, that my life wasn't silver spoon rolled out for me, and like 100%. You know, granddaddy's money went to daddy and daddy's money went to, it's like, you know, it's not like that. And to flip that, I think it's important for people to understand, like, when you see a black person, and this goes back to the conditioning, and sometimes the conditioning isn't even within, like, we don't know what we don't know. But just because I'm 6'2", 215 pounds, and you see me in a sweatsuit, doesn't mean that I'm trying to rob, steal, rape, or do something bad to you. And I'll toss this story in there. It's coming from the gym one morning. This is a couple years ago. Got done at the gym, and I went to the Whole Foods, Upper Arlington. So
right here,
gym clothes, right? You know, I don't think I had a hoodie on, but I'm in gym attire, right? But like some gym shorts, basketball shorts. And, you know, I go to check out, and person doesn't, like, there's no acknowledgement. There's no, hey, good morning, how's your day doing? Like, none of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like kind of waiting, and I'm paying attention to it. Like the person before me, there was, hey, you know, how are you? So I'm like, okay. Person after me, hey, how you doing? But like with me, there was nothing. So I'm like, okay. It bothered me.
Yeah.
Because I look for consistency, right? Good or bad. If you're racist, be racist. Like, be consistent with it. And so later that day, like in the evening, I'm in business attire, and it's the same person. And I come back, I'm in business attire. Now, granted, maybe the person didn't have their coffee in the morning, but when I was dressed in business attire, I had gone home, I had shaved, showered, got ready for the workday, and now I'm back out, then there's more engagement. So like I'm, why? Like I'm a little sensitive to that. So just because I look a certain way or people look a certain way, don't make that assumption, right? Don't believe everything that you see on TV or in the movies because it's skewed. It's a skewed view. I think it's important to go to the why and like get to know people for, like in the words of Martin Luther King Jr., the content of their character. And so, off on a tangent a little bit, white people, like, you don't have to go to every black person and be like, hey, like, I see you, I'm sorry. Like, if I don't know you, I'm like, you're weird, get away from me. Like, that's weird. But I think that through all of this, what the world needs and what minorities, people of color are looking for is like judge us by the content of who we are, not as a whole. Because one, you can't do it as a whole, but like, and then question why, if this is a struggle for you and you don't agree with the things that I'm saying, why? Like, why? Question yourself, why do I think the way that I think? Why do I think it's nonsense? Black Lives Matter, I don't, like, why does that have to be a thing? Like, why is it? Do the research, right? And a lot of people, and I'm guilty as well, like, microwave society, I want it put on a platter, like, why should I? Before you say that you don't like something or you don't agree with something, like, do the research. So now we're here, we're having this conversation. For me, like, part of the action steps is what, I would encourage people to do, not just white people to do, because look, as a black man, I'm guilty as well, where, have I done the research of everything do I know every black author? Do I know every black movie maker? Do I know every, black business owner in the city of Columbus? No. I think that's ridiculous to be a requirement. So there's research that we can all do. Since it's on our plate right now, since we are in this moment right now, here are a couple of my favorite resources that I think will help people take that first step. Books, I'm a big reader, but I know people are like, man, like, I don't really feel like plowing through a book. Okay, so there's a movie and a documentary, The 13th. It's on Netflix, by Ava DuVernay. I think it is extremely well done, and it will lay out from slavery to, I believe it was made in 2016, and like how the system has been laid out. So, quick snippet of that. From slavery, okay, slavery was abolished, but in the 13th Amendment, there was a loophole that if you didn't have a job, if you were loitering, and a lot of different things, that you could be put in prison. So as a slave, you're freed. Who's hiring you?
Sure.
now you're in prison. And so then that goes into the mass incarceration. When They See Us is a movie that was put out, I think last year, about the Central Park young men, the 5 in Central Park that were just wrongfully imprisoned, and they were kids when they were put in jail, wrongfully in prison, and I think you can imagine what would happen in prison at 16, and I think one of the guys was in prison for like 15 years for a crime that he didn't commit. Google the Tulsa massacre. Google Rosewood, Florida. You know, these are some things that are just, they're simple. You can pop it on and like start the process. Do you have to? No, but like if I think with anything in life, it's good for me to get an understanding, and we'll use CrossFit and fitness because this is how we met. But you know, I think it's important to have a baseline of, okay, what you're doing, why you're doing it. And so, like the baseline, when people come in, you don't just toss them into a workout and be like, okay, like pick it up, like, you know, like just follow what they're doing. You know, somebody's doing butterfly pull-ups, yeah, just get up there. You know, it's ridiculous. Somebody's going to get hurt, or they're going to quit and not come back. So there's a ramp-up process where get the foundation, and you know, part of the foundation is, I think even getting the foundation, people need help of where to start. So you do elements, which is laying down the groundwork of these are the movements, this is how you do it, this is why we're doing it. So some of the resources that I just laid out, it's, I think, for me to expect a 38-year-old white man who lives in the suburbs to know where and how to look for, it'd be like drinking from a fire hose. Like, okay, okay, I know Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, do I read their biographies first? Should I watch this documentary? Should I where do I go? Like, so I think it is important to have that foundation as well. So those are just some of my, you know, top of mind kind of resources to like get started. I think that if you watch it, you read it, you'll be like, huh, okay. Like, you know, it's just a step in like understanding why there may be so much strife in society right now.
No, that's great. I think we can try and link that to, you know, this video and conversation, so people can remember that and check that out. And that's great advice, just to give us some background on what to. I took a class in college, and it was really, I had a really good professor at OU, and it was I can't even remember what the class was called. It was like it was like a capstone class, but he mainly dove into systemic racism, and that was like the main topic of this whole class. And it was just a very, I remember at the time, because I had no background on it, it was really like powerful, and I don't remember most of the classes I took, but that one, you know what I mean, that one stuck, like that one really stuck well. And I remember the thing that stuck, probably that I had never even thought, it was a lot about real estate and like you know, blocking, you know,
redlining.
Yep, things like that. So that was the part of it that I mean, this is, you know, pushing 20 years ago now, and I remember that like well, and like details of that. So I was glad that I had that class to at least start some of those thoughts, because I had nothing had even sparked a lot of that. So I think checking out a lot of the stuff that you just told us will help, you know, just at least give some context to a lot of us, like, who are, you know, you wouldn't even know where to start, you know. So I appreciate that, and man, this has been awesome. I think this can really help, and having conversations like this really helps. It's helping me kind of navigate this in the best way that I feel like I can. I think this just helps everybody, anyone who's listening to this, or these kind of conversations are important.
Yeah.
I
think we're both on it's been a pretty heavy topic. It's been heavy on my heart, to say the least. So, one of the things that I've been trying to do is look for the silver lining and look for the good and focus on something, positive. So, what's something positive that we could leave with people? Get out, be active, feed your mind with something, read something good, watch what you're eating, eat something good, fill your body with good stuff. What else do we have? You got any suggestions? Something positive. Love and empathy. That's mine.
That was my first post when everything really hit too, and that's all I was. That was, that's where I'm trying to come from with everything. Just love your neighbor, just like you said.
There you go.
Yep. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys watching this one. This is like a Joe Rogan length one, and they're normally about 15, 20 minutes. But guys, I hope people stuck through this whole thing. I think it's going to be probably one of our most powerful, or the most powerful podcast we've ever had. I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks.